Hello and welcome back to Read the Book First. Today is an odd episode. I think before we even begin, I'm just going to assume it's an odd episode because we're talking about poetry today. But Amanda is back.
Hi, it's me. I know you missed me. I missed me.
Today we are going to be talking about T.S. Eliot's Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, written in 1939. This is a collection of 14 poems.
Did you have the Cat Morgan introduces himself one?
No.
Okay, so that was a fun little extra one in mine, I guess.
So I just found a PDF online because with poetry, you can just Google poem plus PDF and someone probably has it up there.
Well, I'm such a big fan of Cats the musical that I was like, I should just get the book. It'll be kind of cute. And then I'm like, oh, right. T.S. Eliot was a fascist. And also, it's very racist.
You're just getting right to it.
Uh-huh. I mean, and I've always known this because it's always a
Mhm.
joke and oh my God, I'm about to out myself as a huge nerd here.
Now, wait, of all the other episodes, didn't out you as a nerd.
Well, yeah, but there's a difference between big passionate feelings about Percy Jackson and Muppet Treasure Island and big passionate feelings about cats.
No, no.
For those of you who don't know, because we haven't talked about it yet, is I'm a huge musical fan. Specifically, Cats is my guilty pleasure musical. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I just cannot explain my love for those funky little weirdo cats, which is part of the reason why Janessa agreed to do this with me. It's a joke in the Cats fandom that racist grandpa cat, and everyone always skips the song that they just straight up drop to like a racial slur, like three lines in a row, and you're like, oh, okay. Why are we doing that? But they still have the peaks of the follicles, which,
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. T.S. Eliot, fascist, besties with other fascist and Nazi sympathizer Ezra Pound, who is buried in Idaho. No one is surprised. I have family in Idaho. I can say that. Um, Before we really dive into it, just know that we know this is not a great dude. But I think we should just go poem by poem and just kind of summarize slash is talk about if there is any metaphorical stuff because some of them have good metaphors. Some of them I'm in I literally randomly was I was reading them this morning and I looked up to Isaac and I'm like, I think I'm going insane. He goes, you look like you're losing your mind. And I'm like, I think I am. These words don't make sense. They're all blending together. Yeah.
You and I had very different experiences reading this because I could not read this without singing the song to myself in my head. So my brain was fully occupied with visualizing and da 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 la la la
We
la la.
can't get copyright. Can't sing it. We gotta go on the copyrights because I don't know how to deal with that stuff. For other context, yes, Amanda, a huge Cats musical nerd. Me, on the other hand, I, as a kid, loved the musical Cats. I did see the traveling Broadway show when we were in Seattle once when I was 6, and we'll talk about this more when we watched the recorded production of it. But it terrified me. But then I loved watching it. Do I remember full songs? No, I remember clips and I remember the song Memory because everyone knows that song. But
Yeah.
as we go through, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that name from that song. I don't remember most of the melodies. So I was able to read this pretty detached from the musical, which I know is not your experience as a mega fan.
Not even a little bit. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So the first poem called The Naming of the Cats. And essentially just talks about how in this world that we're about to enter, cats have three names. First, they have their human family name, which are pretty normal. Then they have their fancy names that are for gentlemen and dames. And then they have the names that the cats himself knows, which is essentially just in fantasy worlds, there's someone's true name. Um, and if you know their true name, you have power over them. It felt very much that vibe, but without
Yeah. It was also just
why.
really funny of
I liked the
'cause
first one.
both of us have cats. And
Hmm.
they just like sometimes my cat just sits there and stares and stares and stares. So I really like the little bit about like if you notice a cat sitting there, he's probably pondering his name. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, maybe. Or she's just staring at the bird out the window. But yeah, sure. That too. I thought I'd like this poem. It's very cute.
The first one's really good. It has like some nice allusions to Alice in Wonderland. Everyone online, when I quickly looked up this morning, loves this specific poem within the Cats musical fandom and without like and not the Cats fandom also really like this particular poem, which I thought was interesting. Though this one line, I did not like the experience of reading it because it was tough for me to say it. Towards the end, he goes, of the thought of his name, his ineffable, effable, FN, if I can't say it, I have practiced earlier. FN, if it's, you know, that you can see that word? It's EFFAN,
Ephemerable.
effeminable, effeminable. It took me so long to say that this morning, and then I got it. And then now that we're recording, I don't have it.
This is going to be hard for me because I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I can't wait to like watch the musical and then talk about it with you because
There's all
again,
these references.
no, I mean like pretty much every lyric in the show, with the exception of Memory, is word for word from this.
Word for word?
Word for word with very little variation.
I didn't realize it was that one to one.
Naming the cats. Cute little poem. Cool illusions.
Yeah.
Impronounceable names.
It made when I was reading this again without the context of having the musical like connected to my DNA like Amanda. I was like, I read this and I was like, oh, maybe this will be a fun read. And boy, was I wrong. It tricked me.
I straight up read this in like 10 minutes because, again, I was just sitting there singing the song in my brain and I couldn't think of like anything else. Let's talk about the
Yeah,
old Gumby cat.
I liked this one.
This one is very cute. It's also the most overtly fascist. It's okay though.
But I liked this one because we all know a cat who is does nothing all day, but then at night is has the zoomies,
Hmm.
which is
Yep.
most cats because they tend to be nocturnal ish. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's not all the way correct. But anyways, I liked that because it just reminded me of the cats I grew up with that were like lazy all day. Like you could like I was a kid, I would like throw them over my shoulder. I'd put them in backpacks and like whatever. And then at night, they were just all over the house doing everything and like knocking down stuff. And you're like, what? You spent the last 12 hours doing nothing, sir. And now you're attacking
Hmm.
everything. So I liked
Yep.
it because it reminded me of my other cats. But you're right.
It's a very like it's very, very cat behavior. So the thing I'm gonna say about this is the point where I was like, oh, that's why the musical is structured the way it is, because like they're using first person pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know what I expected, but I was just like, oh no, like literally, this is just the song. This is the song. And there's even like, in my edition, they have the little indents there
Mm-hmm.
for the different sections. And we'll talk about it more when we get there, but it's kind of a fun little contrasting thing. And that's like a cool thing about poems, even though I don't have like a smart English degree brain about most poetry stuff. I do appreciate a good format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and most of these poems are pretty similar formatted to his other writings, which I guess we could like T.S. Eliot. If you don't know anything about T.S. Eliot, he was a postmodern poet who famously wrote The Wasteland, which I had to read twice for my English degree, and I fucking hate that poem. It's about how the world sucks after World War One and the pandemic. And I'm like, yes, I like, especially now, we understand the despair and isolation of humanity after such a horrible thing. But I hated that I had to read it twice. That was awful. I also read the other one, the one about something loving Prufrock, whatever. His other famous one about isolation. It's about being a sad man. And I just didn't relate. But anyways, the poetry
Sorry.
format of these poems, the format is similar to his other poems, even though these ones are just like whimsical for, I guess, his standard of whimsical, you
It's
know.
whimsical for like 1920s written by a white man.
And he was writing these for his godchildren in letters.
Yeah.
Like, So he did intend these to be for kids, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that his biases didn't seep through.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude.
The name of the Gumby cat is Jenny and Dots.
Jenny Any Dots.
Oh, I read that
Jenny
wrong.
Any Dots.
Jenny and
It's
Dots
okay. I literally, the only reason I can pronounce these names correctly is the
is the
musical.
musical. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
that's my least favorite name of all the cats that are mentioned in here.
So, like, the thing with Jenny Any
Oh,
Dots is,
yes.
like Vanessa said earlier, she's lazy during the day. She sits and she plays with like chords. And then in the evening, she sits around and bustles about. Specifically, she makes the mice like go do some stuff because she needs a right. They think she thinks he has a regular diet. But more interestingly, she thinks the cockroaches just need employment to prevent them from idle and wanton destroyment. And that's why this is the one of the more fascist poems because it's basically like poor people just need to work harder. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's not how that
Mm-hmm.
works. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They create a troop of helpful, well-disciplined, helpful Boy Scouts with a purpose in life and a good deed to do. Just getting those youth all shaped up, like organizing them into like a well-rounded group of people with positive influences that are going to go make some real changes in the world. And I'm like, that's a
Yeah.
choice.
The next poem is Growl Tiger's Last Stand, and this is the poem that the song it did have a song in the musical, but it got cut out eventually because it just straight up says slurs. And it's like this one is so imperialistic. And it's like, we get it, T.S. Eliot. You're from America, you're living in England. We get it. So Growl Tiger is essentially like a pirate cat. He's missing an eye, his ears all messed up. Half the poem is talking about like his accolades, like what makes him so tough. We don't know who ruined his ear. First half's talking about how like tough and bad he is. He's on this boat, which is essentially in the Thames, going from place to place. And his I forget the cat. What's the cat name of his like girlfriend on the boat?
Griddlebone.
Say that again.
Griddlebone.
Griddlebone. So him and his girlfriend are on this boat. He's being a badass pirate, but then he gets ambushed by other cats, and a lot of racial slurs are thrown around. And we find out that a Siamese cat is the one that ruined his ear.
But most to cats of foreign race, his hatred had been vowed. To cats of foreign name and race, no quarter was allowed.
So not only does he just drop racial slurs, which at the time, because people were racist, it was normal for white people to use these slurs, right?
But basically,
Like,
he's too busy
but
like hanging out with his girlfriend to notice that
mhm,
he's about to be attacked. And then they
yeah.
like low-key imply, especially with one of the later poems, that Griddlebone set him up.
Hmm.
And honestly,
Yeah.
I'm a little like, honestly, good for you, girl. Get the racist man dead.
Yeah, because this cat is like just straight up like Amanda read a little bit ago, just straight up racist. Like not even just like the words they're using is racist. It's like he's like he hates other cats that are not his race. It's like, oh, okay.
Specifically like Persian and Siamese cats and like
Yeah.
mm.
Like it's interesting because like these poems, you could read them as like just like understanding cat behavior, and each one describes a certain way cats are. So, like, for example, cats are very territorial and like fight with
Hmm.
other cats, right? So that could be like the top surface layer reading of this poem if you ignore all the racial slurs, which you shouldn't, but one could do that, right? But then you like remember this is T.S. Eliot writing this, and you're like, oh no, this is purposeful because this man had thoughts about people that were not good.
There is a way to convey a territorial cat without straight up just making the cat racist.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you could just be saying like, whoa, if they had just left it at woe to any cat that got into his space, or, in a more poetry
But
way,
it wouldn't
you could just
rhyme.
cut out that whole paragraph I read and then the cat's not racist. I mean, you could like I'm
I
pretty
know,
sure he
I
was
know.
able to think of one that would rhyme
I'm sure he
if
could
he
too,
wanted to,
but
but spoilers, he
so
didn't want to.
the Rum Tum Tugger.
The Rum Tum Tugger. I like this poem. I don't care. Like whatever you're about to say, I love this because this is
What do
my
you
cat.
mean? What do you mean? What I was gonna say?
You have that face.
Because I was thinking about not because I was gonna say it sucked, because I had other thoughts. I have contained multitudes, Amanda.
No, only I do.
So the Rum Tum Tugger is an indecisive cat that does the opposite that you want, which is almost every cat.
Not even just like does the opposite. It's the contrariness. I always want what's on the other side of the door, and then I'm not
Mm-hmm.
interested once it's opened. If you let
Mm-hmm.
me in, I want out, and if you let me out, I want back in. If you offer
Mm-hmm.
me food, I want something else. You know, it's just he's exactly gonna do what he wants to do all the time.
When I was reading this morning, after I read each poem, wrote down like a summary slash any thoughts I had about it. I quickly looked up that poem plus analysis, and this one had the most analysis out of all of them. And it
Hmm.
was like people were talking about how this is a metaphor for the human condition, about indecisiveness, about the duality of nature, about how we are shaped by the expectations of others. And I was just like, y'all, this is about a cat. Have you met a cat?
To quote Andrew Lloyd Webber, and we'll talk more about it when we actually get to the musical, but how it's about cats.
Yeah, and like when I was reading this like deep analysis of this, someone just like wrote for their English class for sure, just had to make up some BS, which like game recognized game. But they also talked about how T.S. Eliot moved to England chasing after a woman due to unrequited love and married her. She ended up being, I might get some of this a little bit wrong, but she had a lot of issues with like depression. I don't know if she was institutionalized, but it was the 20s, so she might have been,
Mm-hmm.
right. And then I think he ended up remarrying someone, but if someone was like, and this just kind of like mirrors how he wanted this, and once he got it, it wasn't good. And I'm like, y'all, this is about cats. Again, have you met a cat? It is most cats,
It's not that deep, bro. It's just not
right?
like
Right?
it's like when I was reading this, I was like having Dr. Seuss flashbacks for multitude of reasons. And I was like, it'd be really cute if these were like fully illustrated and like, I mean, I had cute little illustrations, but like really colorful illustrations with like two or three lines on a page. It probably would be the same length as the Dr. Seuss book, but like Dr. Seuss has books deeper than this.
The Lorax exists.
The Lorax exists. The Sneetches exists. A Horton Hears
Hmm.
a Who exists. That like this
Yeah.
is not the book to be metaphorical with. Go analyze like his other poetry. This is just for like shits and giggles.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Which it was very enjoyable to see someone else's bullshit online. And I was like, I'm gonna read this and appreciate it, but you're wrong. It's about a cat, my dude.
It just ain't that deep.
Yeah. The next poem, this is the one I remember most the song of. And that is the Song of the Jellicles. The Jellicles in this poem are small black and white cats who dance, and that's about
Yeah.
it. And then I was looking into it, and this comes up a little bit later too, but I was like, what does Jellicle mean? Because everyone talks about like the musical, like, what is the word Jellicle? And Jellicle,
I thought it was just nonsense.
no, so because there's a previous poem called that's not in this collection, but it's referenced later, kind of. It's called Pollicle Dogs and Jellicle Cats. So this is T.S. Eliot make
No.
it's T.S. Eliot kind of poking fun of how the British pronounce things and different like phrases they use. So they would say poor little dog, and that turned into Pollicle Dogs. And then Jellicle Cats would be dear little cat, but it turned into Jellicle Cats, which I don't get the connection like sonically, really.
Poor little
But
dog. Poor little dog. Poor little dog.
oh, that one I
Poor
get.
little dog.
Yeah.
Dear little cat. Dear little cat. Dear little
That
cat.
is not British. You just sound insane, Amanda.
Yeah, no, I can't do it. I just like that's such a foreign phrase for my brain because I
Sonically,
never once in my life said "dear little cat."
yeah, sonically, it does not make sense. The connection straight just like from A to B, but that's where those phrases came from. But specifically, and maybe this will be a question for when we talk about the musical. So, Jellicle cats in the poem are specifically small black and white ones that dance. From my memory, you can just tell me yes or no. We don't have to go really into the lore of the actual musical because that could be saved. But I thought that all of the cats in the Cats musical were Jellicle cats. Is that wrong?
Yes. To flash forward, because I can tell the next question you're going to ask, because a lot of them are all these different colors. They're not just black and white.
Exactly.
When they get to that part in the musical, the way they get around that is they have the cats like talk back and forth at each other. So it's kind of like Jellicle cats are black and white. Well, no, Jellicle cats are moderate size. Like just kind of basically saying we're not just these things.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
That makes sense because I read this and I was like, most of those cats are not black and white. A lot of them are, but not all of them.
Yeah,
But
so
they all
that's how they get
dance.
around that. Yeah, I honestly like the little part that's in italics here. I thought that was like one of the only original lyrics in the show because they were like, we need to have a plot. Nope, it's just from the poem.
Mm-hmm. The four lines turn into a
Speaking
whole plot.
plot is a really strong word.
Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer are two mischievous thieving cats, and that's the whole poem.
Yeah, basically, it's also really cute because it's like this is very cat parent behavior where it's just, oh my gosh, these cats keep doing all these terrible things and it's so annoying. But oh well, what are we gonna do about it?
You don't have to at me and Isaac about our two cats. Just
Well,
kidding,
and
they're
part
not
of the
terrible.
joke is they just can't tell them apart either.
Yeah. Well, we can tell our cats apart, and they're not that awful. It's just, that is very cat parent behavior.
Mungo, Jerry, and Rumpelstiltskin, they just go in and they break vases, steal food from ovens, and just run around causing havoc.
Yeah.
And they can't tell them
Just
apart.
mm-hmm. Just cats being cats. Old Deuteronomy, an old ass cat hanging around, but he's the wise and he's a leader and everyone respects him, but he's old. That's the
Hmm.
poem.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my thoughts about this I can't say until we talk about the musical. Honest to
Yep.
God.
Because there's no substance in this. And if there is poetry, there is. Okay, here's my thing. So far, there's not much substance in these poems until there is, and we don't want that substance, i.e., Growl Tiger's Last Stand.
Hmm.
Yeah. So many of these are just like cats be cats.
Well, it does speak a little bit to the fascism of T.S. Eliot because it's like this older cat automatically knows best and is the wisest and is the leader. So, there's that part of it, but honestly,
I
there's
mean,
really just not that much to talk about.
yeah, but also like fascists aren't the only ones that have old wise leaders. You know what I mean?
You're right. You're right.
Most cultures in general.
Most cultures, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Okay. I'm going to save that and make a soundboard. I don't know how to make a soundboard. Next, we get to a poem that does not belong in here because it's about dogs, and that is Of the Awful Battle of the Peaks and the Pollicles, subtitle, together with some account of the participation of the pugs and the poms and the intervention.
Of the great rumpus cat.
Essentially, this is T.S. Eliot. He's just really saying, I don't like dogs, and they bark a lot in the park.
Hmm. And also just a quick little
And
chance
that
to be
they're,
racist again.
yeah,
Now the peak, although people may say what they please, is no British dog.
I mean, Pekingese are a Chinese breed of dogs, but you don't have to say it that way, T.S.
Yeah.
Eliot. Yeah.
Hmm.
Also, fun fact, his wife had a Pekingese.
That's some shady shit. I hope she divorced him. I know she probably didn't.
Probably didn't, because, the time and stuff. Anyways, the dogs battle, and the dogs are dumb. The poor little dogs, or pollicle dogs. And yeah, that's what that poem's about, roughly. Roughly. That was a good pun. I just thought of it.
You got my pity huff.
Thank
You
you.
got my pity huff. That's all you're gonna get.
That's all. That's all I need in life. Not an impressive poem within
At
this
all.
collection. No.
It's only in here because of the great rumpus cat.
Yeah. Yeah. The next poem,
Mr. Mistopheles.
Mr. Mistopheles, the Magician Cat. My only note on this poem is Magician Cat. That's all I wrote down about this poem.
I really like this poem because it's cute, and I really like the song that gets based on this poem. So that's a big part of it. Also, it has a killer D&D reference, prestidigitation.
I did see that and I did think that. Because this does not predate D&D at all.
No, D&D has been in production for about 300 years. It
Absolutely.
has its origins in the Salem witch trials when secretly that's where they learned to store their spells so they wouldn't get prosecuted as much because they could just say that it was a fun game that they were playing. And the Puritans were totally cool with all the fun games.
That's a great
Famously
t-shirt.
fun people.
That's a great t-shirt. Puritans, fine with fun games, or we're okay with fun games.
It's
Okay.
just like a cute little description of this tiny little black cat that's just you never know what the fuck he's doing. He's just all over the place. And honestly, like, good for him.
The next poem, McCavity the Mystery Cat. I know this tune because of TikTok.
Mhm.
But McCavity is a super secret criminal. It's essentially based off Professor Moriarty from the Sherlock
Yep.
Holmes books.
Isn't
At
it like
the
taken
end,
word for word from his description?
almost just about. At the end, it mentions
Mungo Jerry,
Mungo Jerry and what's the other one?
Griddlebone. I might mention Mungo Jerry. I might mention Griddlebone.
I thought I was gonna list his bud, but I guess not.
See, that's the interesting thing. Like, if we want to talk about Cat's lore, which I won't because I'll save it for the musical, but Mungo Jerry's listed, but not Rumpelteazer.
Interesting. But yeah, so those guys are just his little agents. And then he describes McCavity being the Napoleon of crime, which isn't Napoleon like he's a criminal because he like did all like in charge of war is crime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the Napoleon of crime, I just thought it was a little redundant of a phrase.
No, I thought it was like I disagree. I feel like when you're saying that somebody's the Napoleon of crime, you're basically saying they're like a mastermind because Napoleon was like a very good military strategist until he's fucked up and died.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt it was redundant, but
I disagree. I just also think it's like a fun little callback to have Griddlebone in there because even though it's racist and we don't talk about it gets ignored in the like musical. The
mhm.
fact that they like just have that very slow implication of she slipped away really easily. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
And then she's like, yep, she was working for McCavity the whole time. I think that's a fun little thing, and I wish that it wasn't racist so that we could just continue to have that fun little discussion.
that's McCavity. That's all it was about. But yeah, very, very Professor Moriarty. There's a lot of Sherlock Holmes in general in this poetry collection, like allusions of Sherlock Holmes references, which like makes sense. It would have been very popular for a young kid to read Sherlock Holmes at this point. So next we have Gus the theater cat, whose full name is Asparagus, but they call him
But
Gus,
that's such a fuss.
which I'm like, oh, Asparagus is a great name for a cat.
Is it?
Absolutely. No, Asparagus is a great name for a cat. As someone whose cats are named after food things, Asparagus is a great name for a cat.
Yeah, but your cat's names are like saffron.
I
Asparagus?
Asparagus is a great name for a cat.
Okay.
When this episode comes out, I'll put a poll on Instagram and people can vote.
Is asparagus a good name for a cat? Okay.
I'll put it up and we'll see who wins.
Hey, viewers, I am just saying asparagus is poisonous to cats.
Okay, doesn't mean that makes it a better name.
Why
That makes it cooler
would it make it cooler?
because say it's taboo.
That's also not entirely true. I just made it up.
I know, but like if it was,
Anyway, Gus the theater cat, his whole thing is that he's old and he used to be a star and now he sits around and complains.
and anytime he gets a chance, he'll talk about his glory days,
Yep.
which is those kind of people love doing that. Most of the poems have like cat behavior within it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one, I'm like, I don't see cats doing like what kind of cat behavior is in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more just like, if having a cat in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was like a thing because I'm not that well versed in 1920s theater production, but just having a cat in the theater who like hangs around and maybe they grab to like do a part every now and then. And because he's a cat, he blows it up into this. I was the star and I did all these things and now I can't.
Yeah.
But it's very like, okay. It's more of a human thing.
Yeah. This next one, I love the title. I was
Jones.
Bustopher Jones, the cat about town. Have you seen What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, of course.
You know where he goes, New York City. It's like this is like the title like has that vibe of like
Yeah.
Buster Jones. Yeah. This is a poem about a literal fat cat. And it's just like talking about how he's fancy and goes to all the clubs and eats all the foods and a slight commentary on class and society, but really it's a fat cat.
Yeah. He
Mhm.
basically just goes from day to day and gets different food and enjoys his life. And honestly, stray cat living on a high-end street, going to different clubs, sounds kind of fun.
Good move for that cat, survival wise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's about all that poem is about. Skimbleshanks, the railwood cat. This is when I was writing this. This is when I looked at Isaac and I said, I think I'm losing my mind.
Oh, see, I really like this one.
No, just me writing down this word and then like thinking about the word and then me thinking about all these other random cats and words that I had just spent time reading. That's what made me lose my mind. Not the actual content of the poem, just the whole act of reading all of this in one sitting and trying to understand it without the musical.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's very like it's like whipped cream. There's no substance. You're just kind of enjoying it.
Or sure, enjoying the word.
I mean, like, let me rephrase. These would be very fun, like little poems to read to for a bedtime story.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, not the racist ones, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they do have like fun cadence and fun rhyming, but
Yeah.
this one actually I did enjoy this poem though after I got through my brief stint of what's going on in my life that I had that ate this morning. But this is about a cat who lives on the train and like the train can't leave until the cat's on board
Mm-hmm.
and he guards everyone and he makes sure everything is going okay. And it was like I like this little adventure. Like I want to read a little kid book about this cat that lives on the rail on the train. That sounds
Mm-hmm.
like a good little kid book.
Right? Your little picture like illustrated and Skimble, where is Skimble? And it's like, and this is the one where they do make changes to the lyrics because it goes from you may say that by and large it is Skimble who's in charge. They change it so that Skimble's the one singing it, so it becomes you may say that by and large it is me who is in charge. And I supervise them all, more or less. It's just a
Yep,
very cute.
I like that one. And then the last poem is the ad dressing, AD hyphen dressing of cats, the dressing of cats. In the beginning of the poem, he says, "A cat is not a dog."
Hmm.
And you're
Hmm.
like, okay, we get it. You love cats. Just straight poetry. The person who wrote this is one of the most influential postmodern poets of early or 20th century. And it's like, but he also just wrote 14 poems about his love for cats, which like
If he wasn't a fascist, I'd be like, oh, relatable, honestly.
exactly. Exactly. I'm like, without context of knowing who T.S. Eliot was, that's fucking cool. But then you're like, wait, he was a fascist. Wait, he was best buds with known Nazi sympathizers and eugenics sympathizers. And it's like without context, cool. With context, what the fuck?
Hmm. It's like Hitler's vegetarian, just like weird shit of just like what? Like
Yeah.
we'll talk about it a little bit more, but my friend Andrew, shout out to Andrew. I hope you listen to this one. But he's obsessed with the line, a cat is not a dog in the musical, to the point where he'll just quote it randomly. And I'm like, yep, that is definitely a line in the most produced musical in the world.
Uh-huh. Do you want to know some facts? I'm not calling them fun facts. Some facts about T.S. Eliot slash the writing of this.
Yes. but I have two things to add to this really quickly.
Yes.
First of all, I want to talk about the cut poem, Grisabella.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also like to talk about this weird ass little end poem that was included on my version. Cat Morgan introduces himself. It's basically like about this cat who's here, and I have no idea where this poem came from. But he's just like, yeah, I used to be a pirate, and now I'm like a rough and tumble cat. And if you need to come visit me, just come see me, and I'll get you hooked up. It's like, oh, so this is a criminal cat with connections. What a random thing to add into this book.
Weird.
Yep. And then Grisabella is a former glamour cat who's now sad and stretched out and ugly. It's not really a very finished poem. It's just he started to write it and it's like, oh, T.S. Eliot was like, this is too sad for a kid's book, kid's poetry book, and he stopped writing it.
Well, here are some facts. I'm going to start with the fun one and then we'll read the not fun one. Here are some of T.S. Eliot's cats' names that he had in real life. He had Jelly Lorum, Teddy Paws, Wickas, Wicas, and my favorite, George Push Dragon.
I love that push dragon. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. So
That's adorable.
he was a cat person, as we can tell by him writing a whole collection of poems about cats and his cats'
And then
names.
how they behave. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Do you know where the nickname Old Possum came from?
No.
So, T.S. Eliot grew up in the South of the U.S. He became buds with Ezra Pound when they were both in the U.K. Ezra Pound also was from the U.S. and had spent a lot of time in the U.S. But once they were friends, they delighted. Also, do a New York Times article about this, Amanda. They delighted in appropriating in words that Black folks in the South use, like dialects, like essentially what we would call AAVE now. They like loved talking in the 20s version of that vernacular, and they used a lot of slurs. But Old Possum is a reference upon a reference to some old abolitionist writings that they like to make fun of. So yeah, so Old Possum is just a racist inside joke between Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot would call Ezra Pound Briar Rabbit was his like nickname. So they had rabbit and possum. So like it seemed harmless because they're just. So I found that out today, which like I knew about T.S. Eliot's like fascism and like just in general shitty white man-ness. But it's like, oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Lordy. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I
That's
learned today.
fun.
Yeah, those are
Thanks.
all the yeah. And like when we look back at these canonical authors, I remember constantly in when I was studying English uh literature, constantly having a conversation with professors, like separating the author from the writing or from the art. And I am like, no, we can't do that because it's ingrained, like in this children's poetry collection, it is ingrained. It's in the title. There's a whole poem with ridiculous slurs. Like this collection, it's equal parts. This is so fun and dumb. And oh my God, why does this exist? You know?
Yeah.
But that's also like so much of the English literature canon with the capital C, right?
Well, and I think the thing is, and we kind of again, this is something that I want to touch on when we see the Cats musical because they really double down on some fascisty things. T.S. Eliot would hate Cats the musical, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something I take a lot of solace in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, he would.
And honestly, that's kind of the end of it. I feel like separating the art from the artist has merit occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
but also people are complex. And I feel like when you reduce them to, let's just talk about the art, like, we talked about Dr. Seuss earlier. He wrote some really influential, really interesting, good children's books. He also made a lot of political cartoons that were really racist.
Yep.
And even if he had changes of heart later down the line, that didn't make it less racist.
Yep. Exactly. Like,
People
And
contain multitudes.
yeah, and some of those multitudes are bad. I'm not going to say I enjoyed reading this collection of poetry. I enjoyed reading this because of like the whole like thought journey it took me on. And like obviously so that we could do the podcast. I enjoyed that. And then that we get to watch the musical next. Like that I enjoyed. But like there's like three of these poems that I was like, oh, I like this poem as a poem. You know what I mean? Because you can read a poetry as a collection or poem by poem, right? Like you have the ability to separate them. With poems, I would say the ones I enjoyed were The
Yeah.
Naming of the Cats. I enjoyed The Old Gumpy Cat because I had a cat that had the night zoomies, and I like the title,
Christopher
Bustopher
Jones.
Jones. I didn't really like the poem, but I like the title. But the Railway Cat, I thought that was a strong poem
Yeah. I mean, I gotta admit, I like pretty much all the ones that are about like just one specific cat.
that have a little bit of a story almost.
Yeah, like the Mistopheles, the Rum Tum Tugger, the Skimbleshanks, the Mungo Jerry Rumble Teaser, Jenny Any Dot, an old Gumby
Hmm.
cat. The exceptions to that are the old guy cats, like not a huge I think the way that it's staged in the musical is so much more interesting for both Old Deuteronomy and Gus
Gus,
the Spear Cat. You know,
yeah,
I like Buster Jones. That's probably my least favorite of the like named cats poems though.
the title's just so good. Bustopher,
Yeah.
excellent cat name. Bustopher Jones. I am excited to watch the musical now that I've read this, just to like show how much better it could have been. And it's weird for me to say that because Cats is known to be not like a like I mean it's obviously well loved because it's the most mass produced, right? But it's
Okay,
like
so
but it's not like good as in like the
no,
best
no, so the
musical, you know what I
reason,
mean?
but you know why it's mass produced, right? The plots don't matter. So when
Yeah.
you like go to different countries, you don't have to worry about the translation. You're just there to watch the spectacle of these cats dancing.
Yeah.
Nobody like in the general audience gives a shit about like, oh, the deep, intricate lore. They're just like, oh, cool, we can go watch cats dance. And that's literally the reason it's the most mass-produced musical. It's because it's all you need are people who can dance and
Yeah.
sing. You don't need to worry about translating. You don't need to be worried about cultural context. There is no context that makes this show make more sense. You are just sitting there watching cats sing about which one of them gets to die.
Yeah. Which like barely is touched on in this in the poem, you know? Like there's that
Oh yeah, no,
that
that's like
stanza.
that's like that's wholesale created from
Hmm.
absolutely nothing. And you're just sitting there like, Andrew Lloyd Webber, you good, man? You good?
Any last thoughts on this poetry collection?
It exists.
It sure does.
And, cute poems. Shame the author's racist.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Read the Book First. Please follow us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. We recently announced all the future episodes for the rest of season 2. Amanda will return next week to help us break down the 1998 recording of Broadway's Cats. And then the following week, she'll be back to help us figure out what's going on in that 2019 film adaptation of Cats. What a film, you guys. After we're done with Cats, we will be reading and watching Aragon, and then the last movie book pairing will be Aquamarine. So please follow us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast to keep in the know of what's going on. Once season 2 has finished, I'll be posting fun little bits and reels and stuff on our Instagram that I hope you guys enjoy. Rate us 5 stars, leave us reviews. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this podcast. And remember, read the book first.